Okay, SUV coupes have been polarizing opinions ever since they came to be. Remember the BMW X6? Some people loved it, some people hated it, but opinions were irrelevant because it sold like hotcakes. And now the SUV coupe phenomenon is trickling to more affordable segments. Our review of the Tata Curve is right around the curve, and today we've got this with us. This is Citroen's take on the SUV coupe, the Citroen Basalt. Welcome to Evo India and welcome to our review of the Citroen Basalt. Before we get into things though, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the Evo India channel and leave a comment down below. Would you prefer an SUV coupe in your garage over a standard SUV? I'd love to know. Let's start by talking about styling, because styling is honestly one of the biggest highlights of the Citroen Basalt. Up front, you have a familiar face shared with the Citroen C3 Aircross. The headlamps, they look cool, the split headlamp design. You've got LED projectors in here now, which is new compared to what the C3 Aircross got at launch. But the face is a nice face, it's a very European face, and it's fairly novel because you don't see too many of these cars on Indian roads. Over at the side, you've got 16-inch alloy wheels, a nice looking wheel design. You've got this black cladding that runs the width of the car. And we must talk about the wheelbase, because the wheelbase is 20 mm shorter than the SUV, but the tail is longer, and so the overall length of the car is actually longer. There are still obvious signs of cost cutting. This flappy door handle, which I don't mind so much, but what I mind is this keyhole, not very nice to look at, and it just doesn't look so great. No keyless entry here as well. But what is the showstopper here is the rear end. This sloping roofline looks very cool. You've got this window line that tapers into one single spot with a bronze element over here. Again, nice design element. The tail lamps, they've got this 3D effect, and the boot lip spoiler is almost parallel to the road. So when you look at it in profile, the Basalt does look very cool. These SUV coupes, they're a hit or a miss when it comes to styling. Like I said, some people love them, some people hate them, and I'd love to hear your opinion of what you think. But honestly, I think it looks very good in the flesh, and this will catch attention on the road. When you step inside the Citroen Basalt, you see things that are familiar, but not exactly familiar. A lot of the dash is the same. You get the same steering wheel as the C3 Aircross. You get the same 7-inch instrument cluster. You get the same 10.25-inch infotainment screen as well, with wireless CarPlay and Android Auto. But where the C3 Aircross at its launch was very bare bones basic with obvious signs of cost cutting, Citroen have learned from their mistakes and not made the same ones here. So they've actually added a fair bit of features to make this acceptable to the modern Indian buyer. You've got auto AC, you've got a wireless phone charger, you've got window switches that are not in the center armrest and are actually in all 4 doors, which I think is the biggest, most important change that they've done to the interior of the car to make it feel more expensive. A lot more features than before, but it's still not top of the class when it comes to features. There's still no sunroof, you still get manually adjustable seats, there's no ventilated seats, so it's not going to be setting any records in terms of the number of features it has, and it's not going to be wooing in that audience that wants every single loaded feature in their car. But these cars are no longer obvious cost-cutting cars. They feel acceptable. Storage areas, really nice. You've got this adjustable armrest that has storage in here. You've got storage pockets here. You've got 2 trays over here along with cup holders and reasonably large door pockets. The seats are very comfortable. The plastics, they're a little bit scratchy and a little bit cheap, and some of the finishing around the dash is not the finest, but apart from that, it's all right. It's a nice cabin to be in, and I'm sure Citroen's going to price it aggressively. That's what their USP has been, and if they do so, if they get the pricing right, this will be a nice cabin to be in. When you come into the back seat of the Citroen Basalt, it's actually a very nice place to be. I was quite surprised. Normally coupe SUVs, they sacrifice comfort in the back seat for their form, but that is not the case in the Citroen Basalt. First of all, headroom is pretty good. I'm 5'10", I've got a couple of inches of free headroom. Somebody taller than me will also have a little bit of space free. So headroom is not a concern despite the roofline. Knee room is also quite good. Despite the wheelbase being smaller than the C3 Aircross, I've got a really generous amount of knee room over here. The seat is also mounted pretty high, so I can stretch my legs out and be comfortable over here. But the Basalt has some tricks up its sleeve, very ingenious tricks. One is the adjustable thigh support. So you pull this up and Basically, you've got better thigh support. I can rest my thighs more comfortably. My feet are a lot less strained and I feel really nice and cocooned in here. It's adjustable in 3 or 4 different settings. So there are clicks and you can adjust it to wherever you find comfortable. Second is this winged headrest. Now, these aren't common in cars and I don't know why they're not common in cars. It gives you a little extra neck support. So when you say loll off to sleep, your neck isn't rocking all over the place. Very neat detail over here. Otherwise, standard par for the course stuff. You've got air vents at the back, you've got Type A USB ports, you've got your cup holders over here, and something that I really appreciate, the window switches are back to the door and not on the center armrest anymore. Okay, so let's talk about driving. Citroen Basalt, the fundamentals are honestly very similar to the C3 Aircross because you've got the same platform, you've also got the same drivetrain. So you've got 2 options for the engine. You've got the 1.2 turbo, which is what we're driving, with the automatic. You also get it with a manual, and you also have a naturally aspirated 1.2 litre with a manual gearbox, no auto over there. And the idea of keeping the natasp within this range is obviously for price and affordability. It will be a lot more affordable than this turbo car. We don't know the prices yet. We should know the prices in a month's time or so. But yes, the turbo automatic will be the top end in terms of price and drivetrain spec. Performance. This car makes 108 bhp and 205 Nm of torque. That's in terms of torque, the automatic actually makes a little more torque than the manual. To drive, honestly, it's not so bad. It's quite nice. This 1.2 engine, it's a nice engine. It's a punchy engine. It feels really refined. Sure, you can feel an irregular thrum at idle. You can feel it in the cabin a little bit. But once you start moving, it does smoothen out, and refinement on the go is very nice. Unless you're really revving your motor out and really wringing the most out of it, it's pretty quiet, silent, and contained inside the car. Performance, not too bad. It does feel quick. You don't have to step too hard on the throttle to get it to move. You'd think a 1.2 turbo would make a big car like this feel underpowered, but it does not feel underpowered. It feels enough. You know, you feel like you've got enough performance. Obviously, it's not got the same performance to rival something like a Creta Turbo or even a Volkswagen 1.5 TSI. Those engines are a lot more powerful, but it's reasonably quick. The claimed 0 to 100 time is 9.9 seconds and it feels reasonably quick. You can make overtakes fairly easily. In-gear acceleration is good, so when you're at 40, if you want to get up to 70, when you're at 60, you want to get up to 100, all of that feels reasonably effortless. You don't have to wring it out too hard for that. You can step on it and ask for more performance, but honestly, the noise and the vibrations that come along with that, you don't want to be doing that too often. It's much nicer being driven in a leisurely manner and building up the performance gradually rather than just immediately asking for it. The engine's also reasonably refined, good NVH levels, and it doesn't feel as agricultural as some of the other 3 cylinders out there, which is a good thing. I must talk about the automatic gearbox also because that's quite nice. This is not an EMT, this is a proper automatic, Aisin-sourced automatic transmission, and that's another highlight. It just makes the driving experience so smooth and so refined, and it makes it feel like a mature driving experience. There's none of that obvious head toss effect that comes with an EMT. There's none of the rubber band effect that comes with a CVT. This is a nice, well-judged automatic that suits this package really well. Sometimes, just sometimes, I feel like there's a slight jerk on downshifts, but it's not always there, it's inconsistently there. And it's not really bothersome in the driving experience. Right, what else is there to talk about? Suspension. Citroen makes a big deal out of their suspension and their focus on comfort. And sure enough, the Basalt delivers. They've delivered on the C3 with comfort, they delivered with the C3 Aircross with comfort, and I think the Basalt is in the same league. You know, it is a really comfortable car. Citroen claims that their suspension geometry is one of the critical factors that allows this. It's a geometry that does not allow too much of the impact to be transferred into the cabin, or at least less impact than what the rivals do. And the second thing is speed dependent damping. So at low to medium speeds, the damping forces are a little higher, whereas at higher speeds, they're a little softer. How does all this translate to what you feel inside the cabin? Well, to start with, the ride quality is excellent. It is really comfortable. It soaks up our roads, especially bad roads, really well. It doesn't thud uncomfortably into potholes. It soaks up the potholes really well. When there are undulations in the road, it sort of absorbs them. When you go over a bump, over a breaker, it doesn't crash down into its suspension. It feels very gentle. Citroen calls this its magic carpet ride, and to be fair to them, it does feel very good. It does absorb a lot of the road, and if comfort is your focus, this Citroen should definitely be on your list. But there are some downsides to this comfort and to this softness. At higher speeds, particularly if the road is a little wavy, it's not completely flat, it does bounce around a little bit and it never feels completely settled. And if you're on a fast highway which is not too smooth, you will feel it in the cabin. You're constantly shifting up and down in your seat, which is not very comfortable. It doesn't have that same settledness that a Volkswagen or a Skoda would have. It's not an uncontrolled bounce. It's not like out of control and bouncing around. It's a very controlled bounce, but there is vertical movement. The second thing is the handling. Honestly, this is nothing to write home about in terms of handling. The steering, it's lazy. You turn into a corner and you realize, oh no, I've got to turn in a little more to make the corner because the steering is so slow on the rack. The feel from the front end is minimal. You don't have too much front end feel, and because of that, you just don't have the confidence to push it hard. It's difficult to judge the front end, and it's difficult to judge the steering. It's not going to pose a problem in regular driving when you're just driving around town, or whether you're on the highway, or even if you're on a hilly road. It's not going to be an issue. But when you start pushing the car a little harder, when you start asking more of it, that's when you realize that maybe it doesn't want to comply so much. You've got to really dial in steering, bring the speeds down just to feel in control. The roll is well contained. It does roll a little bit, obviously, again, soft setup and all of that. But yeah, it's not the most comfortable being pushed hard. So if you're looking for the thrill of driving, despite how sporty and cool this car looks, it doesn't deliver on the thrill of driving on the handling front. But overall, as a driving experience, honestly, it's quite pleasant. There's very little to complain about here. It does most of what most people would ask for it very well. So ride comfort, very good. Refinement, good. It's got adequate performance. Whether you're driving it in the city, out on the highway, it'll deliver on those fronts. And I think the upgraded interior package compared to what the C3 Aircross was really elevates it a step up to a level where it can fight with the competition on par. Earlier, the Citroen C3 Aircross with those silly window switches in the center console and the lack of auto AC, it just felt like a compromise. It felt like you were on a tight budget, but you want a big car, hence you're buying this car. And that's not the impression that the Basalt gives you anymore, because they've sorted all of that out. You still now have auto AC. You have your window switches in the right place. You have the wireless phone charger. You have the kit to make you feel like you're in a good car. Okay, sunroof's still missing, but I'm not going to complain about that. I don't care if my car has a sunroof or not. Many people do, and that's going to make a difference for Citroen in India for sure. But it's a matter of time before they get it, I think. But yeah, closing thoughts on the Citroen C3 Aircross. It's actually a really nice car to drive, in that you have a nice engine. It does feel refined. It does have the punch. It does have the ride comfort. The interior is pleasant. The back seat is really good. Surprising, you think coupe SUVs, they just forget about the back seat, but they've actually put extra effort into the back seat, which I really appreciate. And if you're somebody who wants a car of this size, a mid-size SUV for the back seat, this should definitely be on your list. So yeah, it does a lot of things very well. The only fault in the driving, I would say, is that the handling is just not something that's going to excite you. And that's all right. Not all cars have to be exciting, because there's plenty of people out there that want just a comfortable, no-nonsense car that can go about the daily business, keeping them happy on the inside. And the Citroen Basalt is that car. We don't have prices for the Citroen Basalt just yet, but I think it'll be priced in the region of the Citroen C3 Aircross, maybe at a slight premium of rupees 50,000 to a lakh rupees. If prices can start at 10 lakhs and go up to 15.5 lakhs ex-showroom, I think Citroen will have a real winner on their hands. You're getting a lot of car for the money. You're getting a car that looks really good, that rides really well, and a car whose interiors feel sorted now. They don't feel like they've been completely cheapened out to give you a good price. The Citroën, it may not set any hearts on fire for the thrill of driving, but it's going to be a really easy car to drive, an easy car to live with, and it'll look great at the same time.